Welcome to this May 9th edition of The Truth. Thank you for joining us today. Another action-packed show for you ahead. We're going to visit Nick Shirley on his, I don't know what you call it, his 24-hour odyssey to Cuba. He was going to go for 3 days, and then he got cold feet and decided he better get the hell out of the country while getting was good. Then we're going to listen to Trump on talking about the future of Cuba. He had some interesting comments to make. Then we're going to focus a little bit on the Iran war. Seems like we've lost a U.S. Air Force refueling plane over the Straits of Hormuz. And then Ilhan Omar continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. We'll talk about her and some of her fraud and corruption. And then, as we've told you for the last several months, a historic case just finally got decided in the Supreme Court of the United States. It was Louisiana versus Calais, and that case challenged the legitimacy of the 1964 Voting Rights Act as it related to gerrymandering for congressional seats based on race. This case is mind-blowing, earth-shattering. It is going to reshape, I believe, the future of our country. We'll get into it, into the weeds in just a bit. Charles Goyette joins us later in the show after the monologue. He's a veteran radio host and author. He was besties with Ron Paul. And we're going to talk about the war in Iran and ask the question, is Cuba next? He has a new book out called The Empire of Lies, Fragments from the Memory Hole. And then a really interesting interview we conducted with a Nigerian named Philip Jakepor. And he is the director of the Refueling Development Initiative. He lives in Lagos. We're talking about corruption in Nigeria, especially in regards to the lithium industry there. We're beginning to learn a lot about lithium mining in Nigeria. All right, well, let's get into it. Nick Shirley went to Cuba this week. He was going to go for 3 days, but things got a little dicey. Here's Nick talking about his trip to Cuba.
We go out into the streets and we start filming this video. We're showing people what life is like in Cuba right now, how there's hardly any cars out in the streets. The buildings are like crumbling essentially. All the university is destroyed, the University of Cuba. There's hardly any food out for the people, and just the mass poverty that's taking place. Right now you currently have surgeons doing operations with flashlights because there's no power inside of the hotel, in the hospitals. Right now I'm in the only hotel in Havana that has 24/7 electricity, 24/7, because this is the only one that has that access. That's the reason why I booked this hotel. But since we left the airport, we had been getting told, or the word had gotten out that there was a journalist inside of Cuba. There's only 2 flights that come in here every single day. And right now it is currently 9:30, and we have Cuban intelligence down in the lobby of the hotel right now, working to essentially try to round us up and potentially imprison us or make it so we cannot leave Cuba. So right now we're coming with a game plan to escape Cuba.
What's the expression? Young, dumb, and full of, well, you can complete the sentence. That might describe Nick Shirley because he has really shown a lot of courage or a lot of stupidity, I'm not sure which. But he's not the first YouTuber to go to Cuba. I watched one a couple of months ago and reported about it here. And this guy just left Miami, flew to Cuba, and he spent a week there, and he just went around to bars and restaurants and filmed people. It was before Cuba really started to hurt. And right now, what Trump and his administration is doing is really hurting the people of Cuba. They've cut off the oil from Venezuela. Once we got rid of Maduro, we were able to control the flow of oil out of Venezuela. There is effectively a blockade of any oil coming into Cuba from other places. That is hampering them in terms of power generation. They don't have enough fuel to power the automobiles. And it's having a very negative effect on the people of Cuba overall. Restaurants can't open, and it's hard to get food onto the table. And I think this is all intentional. My guess is it's come straight from the CIA and the State Department and Trump and our government. It's not just Trump, it is our State Department, our intelligence community, and the administration want to have Cuba in our back pocket. And there's a lot of different ways to look at it. It is basically a takeover of a sovereign country. I don't know how you feel about that. I've got some misgivings about it. On the other hand, they have been an ally of Russia and China for the last 60 years. The Russians tried to put nuclear arms in Cuba in 1960, which created the Cuban Missile Crisis. People my age can remember it. That's when we had drills in grammar school where we had to crawl under our desk in the event of a nuclear attack, or in the event of a war, we ran drills where we actually walked home from school. Our parents weren't allowed to pick us up. And so we were preparing for war, and I remember it vividly. So, Cuba has been a thorn in our side. They are a communist nation. The people of Cuba are hurting. The YouTuber that went to Cuba unabated a couple of months ago that I watched, sorry, I can't remember his name where I tell you. It is so obvious from watching his videos that Cuba is mired in the 1950s. The architecture is old. Some of it is very pretty, but it needs to be refurbished. The automobiles are all vintage. They're all 50s and 60s cars. How they keep them running, I don't know. And there's not a lot of industry in Cuba. It is a very poor country. But here's what can happen, and here's what President Trump and his administration, I guarantee you, Marco Rubio is talking to the leaders in Cuba right now and saying, look, we're going to continue to keep the pressure on. You're not doing your people any favors by clinging to this failed system of government. You're 90 miles from the American border. Come join us. Come join America, and we will provide you prosperity. We'll open your borders to tourism. We'll help refurbish and rebuild your hotels and your infrastructure, and you don't have to suffer just so that you can remain in power and in control. I mean, clearly, it is a fascist state. Nick Shirley, I don't think he was being hyperbolic. I think he was legitimately fearful for his life. He cut his trip short by 2 days so he could get out. He was looking at possible escape routes in the event that they did try to detain him. He and his security team talked about stealing a boat, getting away from Cuba, and hopefully encountering the U.S. Navy or Coast Guard that could bring them to safety. I think that was a real kind of outlandish, far-fetched plan that probably was not a very smart idea. But they were grasping for straws at that point. They were also looking at how they could get to the airport undetected so they could jump on the plane and get the heck out before they were even undetected. And I think that's basically what happened. They were also considering trying to surreptitiously make their way to the U.S. Embassy so they could be held in protective custody while they made plans to get out of the country. So it was pretty suspenseful. Here is Nick Shirley talking to Patrick Bet David just a couple of days ago.
What percentage of people do you think are suffering here in Cuba?
La mayoría. La mayoría.
What's your thoughts on communism? ¿Qué piensas de comunismo?
De lo más malo que ha existido en la vida ha sido el comunismo.
Wow, so they're that public
Porque
about it.
realmente ninguno es comunista.
None of the
This
gas
guy
stations
was.
are even in operation right now because there's quite literally no gas.
We stand out like sore thumbs here, so they're wondering why we're here with cameras, interviewing people. They want to know what's happening and what
Who's he?
people are saying. That's why people are not talking to
Under
us.
security.
They're asking why are we trying to leave the hotel early. Cuba right now is facing one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world. Cuba's government is a one-party communist-ruled country, and they are facing massive food shortages, daily blackouts, and a lack of medicine. And right now, a U.S. blockade is restricting oil and gas from coming inside of the country. With communism and socialism on the rise in the West, I wanted to see what life in communism is really like firsthand, as Cuba has been living underneath communism for over 60 years. Upon arrival, I completed all required documents and had received a visa for journalistic activity. However, once I landed, all my camera gear was seized, and within 24 hours, I was planning my escape out of Cuba after their intelligence followed me all day and a 2-star general came searching for me at the hotel. Now let's go see the reality of Cuba and eventually plan our escape out of Cuba. Where are the people at? ¿Dónde está la gente? No hay nadie aquí en la calle, no hay nadie aquí en estas casas. ¿Dónde está la gente?
The problem is that there's no gasoline. It's not easy to move. Anyway, we have a lot of limitation for work.
None of the gas stations are even in operation right now because there's quite literally no gas. When the United States captured Maduro, their main supplier of gas and oil was shut off. So the country right now has hardly any gas, and if you do want to get gas, you have to wait in a line from the government. The guy that we're in our taxi with right now, he said his position to get gas is $1,200 in line, and gas from the government costs around $1, but gas, if you were to buy it on the black market, costs $10 per liter. That's $40 per gallon if you were to buy gas here in Cuba. Before they captured Maduro, was there gasoline in the gas stations?
Always. It was easy.
So he works for the government too.
But it was easy to get gasoline.
And for you,
every day you can go to the gasoline station and buy it normally. It was normal. But nowadays, it's really bad.
Wow, that sounds pretty desperate, doesn't it? And I do think it's a harm that is being inflicted intentionally by the United States government on Cuba. I'd like to know what our audience thinks about that. Please, if you're joining us today on the John Fredericks Radio Network, write me at johngordontruth.com and tell me what you think about Trump's intended takeover of Cuba. If you're watching on live streams on Getter or Rumble, X, YouTube, Instagram, put a comment in the, put your opinion, your thoughts in the comments. If you're on Getter, you can interact with us right now online. Just go to the live chat right there. And if you are on the radio and you want to see the video version of the truth, you can go to Getter, Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook Live, or Instagram. And if you do that, just hit the live button, search for John Gordon Truth. Consider subscribing, hit that little bell for notifications. And if you like us, please feel free to give us a like. It really helps push us out on the algorithm. By the way, today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in Atlanta, Georgia. We also welcome a new sponsor, Bogey's Beef, to the channel. We'll tell you more about Bogey's later on in the broadcast. And also thank you to Bone Frog Coffee as our studio sponsor. So President Trump came to West Palm Beach last week, and he spoke to the Palm Beach Forum. It's a large group of business people. Here's what he had to say about his intended takeover of Cuba.
An architect who's really talented. He's done a lot of work for him. He's got a flair, a beautiful Hispanic flair in particular. And he comes from originally a place called Cuba, which we will be taking over almost immediately. No, Cuba's got problems. We'll finish one first. I like to finish a job. On the way back from, what we'll do, on the way back from Iran, we'll have one of our big, maybe the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, the biggest in the world. We'll have that come in, stop about 100 yards offshore, and they'll say, "Thank you very much, we give up."
Sure as the President Trump said, Cuba is next. He wants to get Iran resolved first, but that's proving to be more difficult than he thought, evidently. Just earlier this week, a U.S. refueling plane, it's a K-35, was reported an emergency. They sent out an emergency message and said they were in distress. Before that, they were circling over the Straits of Hormuz. You can see the circle right here where they made several turns right over the straits, and then they started heading over here to Doha, or in that direction, and they disappeared from radar. Now, the United States government has officially said that there is nothing to see here, that the plane is fine, but no one has seen or can find the airplane. So it does sound suspicious to me. I wonder, I'm concerned about the people who are on that plane, our military men and women, and where are they? And if you want to resolve it, Pete Hegseth or Marco Rubio, just show us a picture of the airplane where it is on the ground at a U.S. military airbase. But they have refused so far to do that. Well, Ilhan Omar, boy, I tell you, her net worth goes up and down like the sun rising and setting. She was reported initially she was worth $25 to $30 million, and then there was a lot of blowback. How did someone come into this country 6 years ago with no money and now is a multi-millionaire? Well, then mysteriously, just out of nowhere, she revised her financial statement, said, no, that was just a clerical error. I'm really only worth a paltry $100,000. What do you believe? Again, put your comments in on the social media if you're with us there, or write to me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from our listeners. Here is her defense that she made this week.
Today is the deadline for Congresswoman Ilhan Omar to turn over documents to Minnesota's House Fraud Prevention Committee. They're investigating the $250 million Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. At issue, Omar's alleged communications with the people tied to the scandal. The case's mastermind, Amy Bach, now convicted, awaiting sentencing. Defendants billed the government, as a reminder, for meals that were never provided through existing restaurants and sham companies. And court exhibits show Omar's name appeared in several emails with Bach. One of those, entitled Ilhan's Office, was also a text chain involving Ilhan Omar. Now roll back to 2018, Omar's victory party. That was at a Minneapolis restaurant, the Safari restaurant. The owner also caught up in the fraud scheme, convicted on 21 counts. Omar did, in fact, receive campaign donations of more than $7,000 from 3 defendants in the case. Her office says that money has now been donated to charity.
Well, it's her turn to barrel now. The spotlight's shining on her. The fraud in Minnesota is being exposed. People are starting, like that Ms. Bach, starting to pay the price for their ill-begotten gains, and it's about time. We're finally getting to see some semblance of accountability. Will Ilhan Omar be reprimanded, and will she have to be accountable for what we suspect is taking U.S. federal tax dollars illegitimately? You know, the Leering Center, the FBI held a raid in Minnesota last week, and they went into the Quality Leering Center, and they discovered that no one was there, but there was a restaurant tucked in the very back of it. So the whole thing's just a sham. It's an embarrassment, and it's maddening to think that as hard as you and I work for the money that we earn, the taxes that we pay, and the sacrifices that we make for our country, that there are people who are feeding at the trough, who are supposed to be in public office protecting us from that very kind of activity, but they're actually participating in it. I think Trump has got them in his sights, and hopefully there will be justice. Well, folks, the whole political landscape, I believe, is in the process of being reshaped as we speak. The Supreme Court ruled that racial gerrymandering is no longer a legitimate practice. Therefore, all the red states all over the country are redistricting and getting rid of the seats that were created based on racial gerrymandering. right now, we've got a map up here that will show you the changes in different states. You can see that in Florida, all the blue districts except for one up here in northern Florida and 3 in southeastern Florida, and this one is purple, these 2 are purple, are going to change the Florida delegation pretty dramatically. Florida is going to pick up 4 Republican seats based on this new map that the legislature passed. Now, that offsets the 4 seats that Republicans lost in Virginia, but there will most certainly, there is going to be challenges because I just don't think they did it right. They're a state that is 40% Republican. They did have 5 Republicans or 5 Democrat seats and 4 Republicans. Now they've gone to 9 Democratic congressional districts and just 1 big red district in the southwest part of the state. So we lost 4 seats there unless a court challenge is successful. Of course, there'll be court challenges in all these states, but in Florida, they just went by the law that the Supreme Court gave and the rules that the Supreme Court gave them. So I don't see a challenge being successful in Florida, nor do I see it being successful in Texas, because they likewise have redistricted and they've picked up 5 Republican seats. So the sands of change are underneath our feet in this very moment. I've been predicting for the better part of 6 months that I felt there was a good chance that the Supreme Court would rule that the rules that were enacted in 1964 were no longer needed, necessary, or appropriate in 2026. That's exactly what has happened. It does have the potential to rebalance the balance of power in this country. And I think that Democrats are under assault all over the country. They're under assault in state legislatures that are redrawing the maps. They're under assault where the FBI has gone into Georgia and Arizona, I believe Nevada as well, and confiscated the ballots. They're under review in Quantico as we speak. I think timing is everything, and I think the administration is waiting until the optimum time to drop the bombshell and confirm for you what I have been telling this audience for 4 years based on my own personal knowledge. 2020 was rigged, just like President Trump told us it was. I think you're going to see election reform taking place all over the country. We need to get rid of those Dominion and Symantec machines. They're made, parts of them are made in China. Then they assemble them in Taiwan and send them here. And there are ties between those companies to Venezuela. And I don't know what the deal is. I think we're going to find out in due course. But it does not pass the smell test under any measure. And I just hope and pray that Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman have to give their Presidential Medal of Freedom back, because that was a sham. Damn Joe Biden for awarding them. And in the process, they ruined Rudy Giuliani's life. They took his bar license, some of his family heirlooms, and drained his bank account. And now Mayor Giuliani is in the hospital just miles from where I'm standing today in critical condition. We say prayers and wish Mayor Giuliani a recovery. He is reported to be improving modestly. Now, Governor Abbott of Texas, he weighed in on redistricting this week. Here's what he had to say.
Following last week's Supreme Court ruling, Republicans could add 14 new House seats. Earlier today, Tennessee passed a new map, adding 1 GOP seat, adding on to potentially 5 new seats in Texas, 4 in Florida, 1 in both North Carolina and Missouri. Let's see what Indiana does. Special sessions now have been called in both Louisiana and Alabama, which could also add seats, with other states possibly following suit. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is here with reaction. Governor, we got to be really clear here. The people that mastered the art of gerrymandering districts to death, even though it was unconstitutional, are the Democrats. Now, Republicans finally are saying, no, we're not going to take it anymore.
Sean, you're spot on. So look at the entirety of all of the New England states. In all of New England, there are millions of Republican voters, and yet there is no member of the United States Congress who is a Republican. So they drew their lines a long time ago to eliminate Republicans in Congress. And what has happened across America is lines have been drawn illegally based upon race. And now in the aftermath of this Supreme Court decision, all the states are beginning to correct their maps that were drawn illegally for racial-based purposes. We all know that discrimination on the basis of race is wrong, including in drawing congressional districts. And as you pointed out, with the addition of Florida, now Tennessee, other states stepping up, I applaud Louisiana, I applaud Alabama for joining what Texas actually began. It was Texas that led this effort from the start, adding 5 new Republican seats. We knew what was coming. We course corrected the Texas map. It's essential that all other states in America do the same thing to course correct what Gavin Newsom did, what's done in Illinois, what's done there in New York, and Republicans can fight fire with fire, and we're going to win it.
Well, I think Governor Abbott overstated the case a little bit. I don't think that racial gerrymandering was illegal because the Supreme Court tolerated it for the last 60 years. The United States Congress enacted the Voting Rights Act in 1964, which permitted gerrymandering based on race. So I'm not sure that the term illegal is accurate. However, now the rules have changed, and so now it would be illegal to gerrymander on the basis of race. And I think that the state legislatures have every right to go back and redistrict their states based on the current law and the current demographics. Please make an intellectual argument and tell me how that's not legit. I think it's not only legitimate, I think it is appropriate that they do so. This is all going to work to the disadvantage of the Democrats. And I celebrate that because they lie, they cheat, and they steal. They stole the 2020 election. I have firsthand knowledge. I had a front row seat in the case of Jeffrey Satir versus the Fulton Board of Elections. I've seen the evidence. I saw the duplicate ballots on the Secretary of State's own website, 3,200 of them. We saw video footage from the State Farm Arena with Ruby Moss and Shay Moss, Ruby Freeman, and their co-workers feeding the same stacks of ballots back through the tabulators multiple times. One batch of approximately 100 ballots went through the tabulator 32 times. That's 3,200 votes. Then we had massive ballot stuffing. If you recall the 2,000 mules, people were driving up to drop boxes and putting in 20 and 30 ballots at a time. We had eyewitnesses who saw a stack, a pallet full of pristine ballots that were unfolded, untouched by the human hand, all scored identically for Biden, and the ballots were not folded, and they were waiting in the State Farm Arena to be counted. That would approximate perhaps as many as 20,000 votes. We had thousands of people registered at UPS stores, homeless shelters, and churches and abandoned apartment buildings. So the list just goes on, and we had dead people that were voting, and people that admitted to voting twice, and we estimate 40,000 illegal votes in Fulton County, but now the number's much higher because we discovered that 177 ballot tapes were not certified as required by state law, and that represented about 320,000 votes. So those votes should not have been counted. Now, what is going to happen? Well, you know, there is a possibility that the 2020 elections could be decertified. Think about the implications of that. Would that mean that John Ossoff, I'm sure that his election was rigged. Does that mean that he is no longer eligible or no longer a United States Senator? I don't know. It wouldn't disappoint me if that were the case because I don't like cheaters and I don't like people who benefit from cheating. So maybe Ossoff could lose his seat. And there were a lot of state house seats and AG races across the country that were similarly affected. And I think that when all this news is brought to light, the American people are going to be rightfully outraged, and we'll just have to wait and see what the repercussions are. I guess what I'm trying to get to is that all of this is working in favor of the Republicans in these very, very important midterm elections. And I, for one, am glad to see Republicans fighting back against the Democrats. For so many years, I've said that we show up for a gun battle with a pocket knife, and we get our butts kicked every single time. When are we going to start really genuinely fighting? Well, I think we're starting to see that, the emergence of that right now. Thank you, President Donald J. Trump. The midterms are vital. We will lose the American First agenda if the Republicans don't retain the House and the Senate, and it will effectively make Donald Trump a lame duck for the last 2 years of his administration. That is a fate that is not something we should be willing to even contemplate, let alone sit on the sidelines and not do everything we can to work to make sure that it doesn't happen. So we have to have election integrity. We have to get back to a competition of ideas, and we have to have elections where every man and woman get one vote, and one race or one segment of the population does not have favor over another. And then we have true racial equality in our country. That's what the Democrats have told us they want for 60 years. Okay, now we can have it. Let's go. All right, well, today's studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. If you're grinding through the day like I do and need a perfect kick without the jitters, grab some Bone Frog Coffee. Best part, it's veteran owned, founded by retired Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special operations. If you don't already know, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol of the SEAL teams, and that represents those that gave their lives in combat and in a reminder of the ultimate sacrifices for our freedom and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. I start every day with a cup of Bone Frog coffee. I recommend that you do too. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. Aiming for over 500,000 donated. Coffee with a cause, you bet. That's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head over to bonefrogcoffee.com, snag some K-Cups, whole beans, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day just like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our vets and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. Check them out once again at www.bonefrogcoffee.com and use the promo code TRUTH. Our show today is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in Atlanta, Georgia. They collect waste vegetable oil, service grease traps, clean the vent hoods from restaurants all over the metropolitan Atlanta area. And all of the waste vegetable oil collected is refined and used for the production of biodiesel fuel. So not only are they taking a waste product and converting it into a renewable energy, but they're also improving the air that you and your family breathe every day inside of 285. If you're tired of inconsistent, dirty, unreliable service and automated attendance from your provider, check out PCRenergy.com. Give them a call. They'll come give you a free analysis on your restaurant and help you just breeze through your next health inspection from the health board when they come. Seems like the pollen is out and I'm suffering a little bit. But I'm going to recoup here. I'm going to get a glass of water, and we're going to carry right on now with Charles Goyette. So stay tuned for our first interview. We're going to be talking to Charles about the war in Iran, Is Cuba Next, and his book, Empire of Lies. Stay tuned, and here is Mr. Goyette. Charles Goyette is one of the most informed and smartest guys we've had on The Truth, meaning I wanted to have him back. And here he is, Charles Goyette, an author, a radio personality, and a political student. And he's just authored a paper called The Empire of Lies Comes from Iran. Charles, welcome back to The Truth.
So, John, it's great to speak with you again. It's been a while, and I always enjoy talking to you. Thank you.
Well, likewise. So I've been saying that I wish President Trump had called me before he went to war with Iran, because I would have told him, Mr. President, wars are easy to start. They're really tough to end. Don't you think that's what we're seeing played out in real time?
As he's finding out now, and it's like he's stuck to the tar baby, so to speak, and he doesn't know how to get it off of him. He's stuck to the thing, and he was advised over and over again by good people that had his best interests at heart and our country's best interests at heart. Don't do this. You don't understand. But he surrounded himself with a bunch of yes men, and it was clear that they were a bunch of yes men by his own admission. It was Jared and it was Witkoff and stuff like that they really weren't qualified to be advising him. And I think basically it came down to Netanyahu.
I think you're right, but I guarantee you, without knowledge, my supposition is that the CIA was cheering him on all the way, because they seem to love wars.
Don't they, though?
Yeah, and I don't love them. I love the dedicated men and women who put it on the line every day for our country that are in those organizations, but I'm not fond of the management. What's his name? The head of the CIA.
Right, the one right now?
Yeah.
Oh, what's his name?
Oh, it just skips my mind. But he's a good guy.
Is it Ratcliffe?
No, he was a member of Congress. It was John Radcliffe. Maybe it is John Radcliffe. I think it's John Radcliffe.
I think it is Radcliffe.
Yeah, put your brain together with mine. We got a whole one. And he was such a good guy, and he was transparent, and he was open. And where is he today? I mean, talk about somebody who's disappeared off the face of the earth.
It reminds me of that old saying we used to, congressional races and stuff back where I'm from and where I used to be involved in things like that. The expression was, when you send your guy, he's a guy that agrees with you, a guy that knows the story, a guy that you can count on. You know him from the Little League games or the grocery store or your church or something. But when you send your guy to Congress, he's not your guy anymore.
That is so true.
It's just they're compromised from day one.
I have a good friend who, I'm from Atlanta originally.
Okay.
That's where I raised my family anyway. I'm actually from Ohio originally. But the better part of my adult life was spent in Atlanta. And a really good friend of mine from Atlanta knows Christopher Wray. And every time we had a conversation about the FBI and Christopher Wray, he would jump to his defense. He isn't defending him anymore. He is not the same Christopher Wray my buddy used to see at the Little League Diamond, which is, to your point, exactly how they got to know each other. Well, let's talk about Iran. Ben Franklin said it best, it is the opening line of your article, there has never been a good war or a bad peace. Are we going to achieve peace with Iran? And I one thing you said, I actually differ with you on, respectfully. I was all in favor of the Iran war, and I still am, because I've got a 2-page fine print recitation of all the acts of terrorism that Iran has either been directly responsible for or have sponsored over the last 50 years, and they have claimed thousands of American men and service women's lives, and I'm tired of it. And I think, you know who I really blame? Ronald Reagan. He had the perfect opportunity to hold them accountable for taking our embassy and holding 66 diplomats hostage for 444 days in the late 70s. And if anybody had the justification to neuter Iran, it was Reagan. But he wouldn't do it. Why? Because they handed him the election on a silver plate.
Well, John, I know it won't be the end of our great friendship.
No, it won't.
But I'm going to have to disagree with you about the entire thing. And I could start really with the 47 years ago. And I hear this all the time. Oh, we've been at war with them. They've been at war with us for 47 years. And, you know, we should have shut them down in 1979. I was a very young man when the Iranians took to the streets in 1979. And they were burning American flags and shouting death to America. And I watched this stuff in horror. And I thought, what in the world is wrong with these people? And but of course, at the time, I didn't understand it. And I didn't realize that history didn't just start in 1947. So we had toppled the Masada government, an elected government, in 1953. It was kind of an oil grab for BP and for American oil companies. We toppled that government. Your favorite friends, the head of the CIA, Alan Dulles, actually personally escorted the reviled Shah back to the throne, the peacock throne in Tehran, and installed him. You know, the way they got their demonstration and they toppled the elected government in 53 was the same old thing they do today. They armed thugs in the streets. They paid off thugs. They had snipers shooting people on both sides to create havoc and so on and so forth. So it started then. But here's something really peculiar about what happened in 1979. When the Shah abdicated, when the Shah left, the students didn't riot and they didn't occupy the embassy. And they didn't occupy the embassy until we gave the Shah sanctuary, thanks to David Rockefeller, here in the United States. And then they thought on ample precedent, the people thought on ample precedent, the United States is at it again. They're going to try to reinstall the royalty. And that's when the riots started. And that's when they took the embassy. So that's part of it from my perspective. Also, you know, when we went into Iraq war looking for the weapons of mass destruction, we found, you know, wasted, desiccated old remnants of long ago chemical weapons, maybe some biologics as well. Those were remnants of the 1980 war in which our guy, Saddam Hussein, attacked Iran. We abetted Saddam's acquisition of illegal chemical and biological weapons. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians died. But Saddam was our guy, and we rode to his aid with breaking international laws and conventions to arm him up with some of the most horrendous weapons in the world. And the Iranian people remember this, and the American people don't. So the Iran has been sinned against very badly for my entire lifetime by the United States. And so, you know, when you say, you know, they grabbed the embassy in 1947, death to America, well, there was a lot of precedent for why they did it.
But consider this, November 1979, 66 American embassy workers were held hostage for 444 days standoff.
Yeah.
September of 1984, they car bombed our embassy in Beirut, killing 23 innocent people, and desecrated the U.S. Embassy annex in Beirut.
Well, we should have been there, and Reagan knew enough to get us out, by the way.
Well, but that's like blaming the wife for the husband that's beating her. The 1984 Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorists hijacked Kuwaiti Airways 221 en route to Pakistan, killing 2 American officials. July of 1989, Iran Hezbollah terrorists killed U.S. Marine Colonel William Higgins after kidnapping him the previous year while he was serving on a UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon. Charles, it goes on. It's fine print. It's 2 pages long of one dastardly terrorist act after another. So your argument is there are no white hats, so let the wars rage. Well, the adults have got to show up at some point, but we can't turn the other cheek the whole time.
Yeah, we're not the adults in the room. The United States wade in to the middle of a 1400-year-old religious schism that we knew nothing about, John. We took sides in a battle between Shia and Sunni that we knew. Oh, let me just share with you how pathetically unarmed we are intellectually to enter these kinds of wars. 4 weeks before we went into the Iran war, a group of Iraqi expatriates went to call on President Bush, sat in the Oval Office with him to talk about, what happens after we topple Saddam Hussein? How does the country go? And they're talking to him about the populations in Iraq, and they go, well, the Sunnis, the Shias, and so on. And Bush says, this is your president weeks before a elective war that he wanted. Bush said, Sunnis? Shias? I thought Iraqis were all Muslims. So help me. This isn't internet gossip. I have this from a United States ambassador. I mean, it's pathetic. We're in the middle of a battle about whether who is the successor to Muhammad. I tell you the truth, I don't really care. And the American people don't care. And we keep going in and wading into these things. But if you look at, you look at where the deaths came from, for example, the IED deaths and so on in Iraq, they came not from Shia, they came from Sunnis. The great majority, you can get it from the Defense Department, the great majority of them came from Sunni Islam, not from Iranian allied Shia. And virtually all of the terrorist incidents in the United States have been conducted by Sunni Islamists, I don't think there's been one by Shia Islamists in the United States. So we go blunder into the middle of this long simmering war. And, are you surprised when you invade a country that the people there are going to respond and react to you? So a huge part of the population of Iraq was Shia. So the Shia start bombing us, and they start constructing IEDs. Actually, my friend Scott Horton has traced the existence of the IEDs not back to Iran, but all the way back to their creation by the Irish Republican Army. So the picture is vastly more complicated, but to me, it always comes down to this, John. It's a intervention in search of monsters to destroy all over the world that we shouldn't be, that we don't understand. We don't understand the problem. Do you ever see the Mickey Mouse movie by Walt Disney called The Sorcerer's Apprentice? And Mickey goes into the sorcerer's workroom, the magic room, and he starts flipping the magic wand around, and all of a sudden things start to come alive and spin out of control, and he is not competent to manage them. And things get out of control. Next thing you know, it's a flood, it's a cataclysm, it's a deluge. And this is what we do. We go into these places, we topple governments and so on. We have no idea what we're doing or what the consequences will be. The best course of action is not to make, not to sacrifice our own independence and get mixed up, as our founders warned us, in these eternal foreign squabbles.
Well, it is a non-debatable point of view. I get it. But what do you do? Do you trust the Iranian regime?
I don't trust any government. They all lie.
Well, do you trust them more or less than any government?
I don't trust any governments. I mean, it's not. Well, I don't have a 10 scale.
Clearly, I mean, are they all bad to a -10? I mean, are there any gradations where
governments lie to protect themselves? They lie to protect themselves from embarrassment or from failure. They lie to perpetuate their own authority. Look, I'll tell you.
I 100% agree. But do you, when you look at the governments all around the world, where do the Iranian leaders stack up in your estimation?
Yeah, they stack up like all governments. I mean, they rule people, they move people around. We prop up the governments that do the same things all over the world. We propped up the Shah of Iran. He massively moved people around. We brought in the United States and the Mossad to teach him, the Shah, how to torture his own people. It became the most cruel secret police in modern history, the Savak. I mean, we can't even understand the depth of his corruption.
I think that's
the way he plundered his country.
I think that's a very good point. Now, how do you compare the leadership of Iran to the leadership of the United States? Are we on an equal level with them in your estimation?
Well, I think it's not anything that I would chart or be able to chart, but If we haven't learned during the course of this war that the government will lie to you about things, I don't know who's higher, who lies at a 9.5
Well, look,
rate and who lies at a 9.1.
I love my wife. We've been married 48 years. If I had to identify one weakness, she can be fast and loose with the truth, but that doesn't make her a bad wife. So I get the fact that lies are material, especially when you're talking about peace around the world, and that is an appropriate judgment for governments. But what about genocide? Do you think that killing 43,000 of their own people give them the moral right to lead their country?
I don't think they have the moral right to lead their country. If you're talking about the deaths of Iranian citizens last at the turn of the year, okay. Here's the thing: if you go back, if you look at Scott Bessant testifying to Congress, he said we intentionally embarked on a maximum pressure campaign to break their currency to create revolution in the streets at that time. And Trump said we gave them guns, we gave them lots of guns. So we're in there fomenting a revolution, just like we fomented a revolution in Ukraine, just like we foment revolutions all over the place. And then the consequences are horrific and people start shooting each other and thousands of people die. That's a very bad thing. If you want to tranquilize, if you want to democratize, if you want to civilize a government like Iraq, the first thing you need to do is end the sanctions. And I want to give you just one example, if you'll let me, of why that's important. We put, after the first Gulf War, we put really, really harsh sanctions on Saddam Hussein. The net result was that Saddam Hussein, we created an oil for food program. So the central government of Saddam Hussein was in charge of the food distribution in that country. It empowered him. So if you were a dissident group, you got no food. If you were Kurds that were breakaway, you got no food. If you were his army, if you were Saddam's police, his loyalists, members of his party, then you got ample food. So all of these sanctions always empower the central regime. We put sanctions on Cuba in 1959. Guess what? Fidel Castro and his brother never missed a meal, but the people in Cuba sure did. And the sanctions persist to this day, long after the Soviet Union, which was supposedly the threat at the time, has expired. If you want a democracy, look, when you make conditions severe, economic pressure and so on in countries, it doesn't make them more peaceful. It makes them rally around the flag, and the central government, evil though it may be, and it generally is, becomes more powerful, not less. We should have ended the Cuban sanctions years ago. We should never put those sanctions on Iraq, and we should end these awful sanctions on Iran so that the civilized people there can become prosperous again and take over their country. That's what.
Okay, well, there's a little problem with that right now.
Yeah.
They had uranium enriched to the level of 60%,
Right.
according to people that I respect and have listened to in the United States Senate. I don't know that I really respect Lindsey Graham, but I do.
I hope not.
I do think that he has a level of knowledge that I do. Whether I believe him or follow him is situational. But on this topic, I tend to. At some point, we've got to put our trust in someone, but our government has repeatedly, at all levels of our government, not just Lindsey Graham, but President Trump, have maintained that they had uranium enriched to 60% and 90% was a month away.
60%. They weren't a month away. 60%, yes.
Yeah, 60%. But to get from zero, or I guess uranium is in its natural state is like 5 or 10%. To get from 10 to 60 is a real steep curve, but to get from 60 to 90 is a very shallow curve, and that they claim they were a month away from having a nuclear weapon. And that was why there was urgency.
And that was absolutely false.
Yeah.
Absolutely, stunningly
tell
false.
us your evidence for claiming that that's false.
Okay, well, it's a little bit complicated, but 60% uranium is not even close to a bomb, and it's not just a question of refining uranium to 90%. It's not just a question. The engineering, you know, during the Iraq War, we would talk about this stuff and people would say, oh, you know, and there were disinformation people that wanted us in that war that would float these stories. And one of the stories they floated was that the reason we can't find the nuclear weapons program is that some leading scientists have moved it into their basement. This is absurd. These are huge industrial projects. They take a lot of time, energy, equipment sourced from all over the world. The real problem that the Iranians face, even if they got to 90% enrichment, is what do they do with it? How do you make the containment structure that forces all this material into critical mass so that it can actually explode? Years of testing ahead of them. Years. How do you deliver it? Years of testing ahead of them. The idea that they were a month away from a deliverable nuclear weapon is just silly, but don't take it from me. You've got all of the American intelligence agencies. Look, if the American intelligence agencies that tell us that Iran has no active nuclear WMD program, if they're lying to us, maybe we can get our money back because we spend hundreds of billions of dollars on these clowns. If they're lying to us and it's not true, but they've come out with that over and over again, even during the Trump administration. No active nuclear weapons development program, none.
I mean, if you want me to play devil's advocate illustrating your point, I saw a video recently of John Kerry saying that they were 60 days away from developing a nuclear weapon, and that was like 6 years ago.
Oh, you should track Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, for real. He's been saying it for
25
decades.
years. Yeah.
And then also President Trump told us that we had annihilated their nuclear program because we dropped that bomb that goes way down into the center of the earth and almost gets to where the devil lives, and that the nuclear materials was gone.
I know.
So, you know, you make some really valid points. I guess, I don't know. I'm just so bitter over their taking our embassy and our diplomats. 50 years ago, I lived through that. It cost Jimmy Carter his administration, which I guess was probably a gift to us in the long run. But they do seem to be a very evil empire. And I know a fair number of Persians. And the people I know that are from Iran are some of the nicest, hardest working, smartest people I know. And they don't like the leadership in Iran. And they've got relatives that are living in Iran.
But the expatriates always want the Americans to go in and reclaim their country for them. What are we, the dummies? Or are we the big muscle-bound bozos that have to go in and, you know, settle all the scores? Of course, expatriates fled here because they wanted to get away from the, you know, the rule that would they had their good thing under the Shah, but when that came to an end, they had to get out with their families because another group was going to take over power there. Expatriates all over the place want us to invade their countries and settle the score, and it's not our job. But let me tell you what they've done with it. You know, we keep going back to 1979 and when they took the embassy and they burned the American flags and death to America and stuff. You know what they've done with that embassy? They turned it into a museum. And it's called the Espionage Museum. And volunteers spent years. Talk about painstaking work. I wouldn't think about doing it for 10 minutes, much less for the years that it took. When the Shah fell, the CIA operation in that embassy went crazy shredding stuff because they knew that they didn't want to get caught having done what they had done in that country, the politicians they paid off, the deaths that they had overseen. They didn't want America's fingerprints to show up. So they shredded all their documents. Over the course of years, volunteers went in there and they reconstituted all of those shredded documents, turned them into a book. They piece by piece by piece. The whole place is a museum, the Espionage Museum. You could see still the control room where the CIA, you know, was sending orders about who to do. You could see which politicians they were corrupting and paying off on behalf of the New World Order. I mean, it's an awful thing. And we even tried to do this when Kennedy was president. The CIA even tried to participate in the toppling of de Gaulle. I mean, this stuff goes on over and over again. And, you know, we end up holding the bag for it. And we call it blowback.
And you know, the thing I don't like about it, no one elected these people. And they operate off the books. There's no supervision. There's no accountability. And today we know that they killed the 35th president of the United States. So I'm right there with you. I'm sick of it. And we don't have answers for Building 7. We don't have answers for who tried to take a crack at President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Nope,
and
sure
if you
don't.
believe that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk, I've got some property in South Florida I really want to show you.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean, it's just maddening. And so I get where you're coming from. I guess at the end of the day, when you sift it all out and you're putting it in the recipe to bake the cake, I'm going to defer to President Trump. For 6 years, he truly has never disappointed me. Yes, he's an egotistical maniac. He lied to us about his inauguration. Oh, it was the biggest inauguration in the history of the country. And then there are pictures of Obama's versus his. Yes, we're not going to deface the White House to build the ballroom. And we're going to change the name of the Kennedy Center. I'm still pissed off about that. But at the end of the day, when it's policy and it really matters, I defy you to come up with an example of where Trump got it wrong. I mean, and I've just been conditioned to the point where we've got these issues that are such narrow ones to decide. I've kind of have reflexively deferred to Trump. Is that wrong?
Well, to me, it's wrong. I have many, many friends that are in your same shoes, and I don't blame you. I don't condemn, and I don't criticize anybody that feels that way, except to the extent that you have to remember what he ran on, and he ran on Make America Great Again, and that rallied us all. So he wants to raise the defense budget from $1 trillion a year, more than the next 8 or 9 governments around the world combined, to $1.5 trillion. They need a $200 billion supplemental. All of this, we go blow up these countries, we blow up the roads, the hospitals, the schools, and then we go back in at our expense and rebuild it while our own country is breaking down. I mean, I thought Make America Great Again was a pretty good campaign platform, and I just wish to hell he had stuck with it.
Well, and you and I really do like and respect you, Charles, and you've given me a lot to think about just in the few minutes that we've spent together this morning. And there's very little that you've said that I can disagree with, frankly.
Yeah, we're all on the same page.
Yeah, we're
really
on the same team, but I tell you, I think you could also convincingly make the argument that he is making America safe again. Because whether we're the bad dog trainer or not, I've had over 40 dogs in my life. I really know dogs, and I happen to love them. And I've watched how dogs behave when they're mistreated. And when you kick a dog and you mistreat a dog, it becomes an angry dog. And that's the case that you're making for Iran. So I do get it. And I do agree that there are no white hats. I guess it's a question of who's the worst, and I'm with you. The CIA needs to stop meddling in these foreign governments, and they need to adopt a live and let live philosophy, I think. But then on the other hand, do they know things that we don't know, and are there justifiable reasons for us going into these countries? But it's hard to figure it out at the end of the day. I kind of, on the issues of domestic tranquility or domestic war, I do kind of defer, rightly or wrongly, to our leaders, because I just have this premise that they know things that we don't know and will probably never know. And there's the empire of lies.
The whole backstory that's been hidden from us is in this book. Empire of Lies, Fragments from the Memory Hole. The entire backstory of all the things we're talking about and the stuff that they are very good at managing. About Operation Mockingbird. How they controlled the press, and it goes on today. We know the lapdog press that we have today. They've been very good at sanitizing their crimes. I was just in Dallas for a wedding, and I went to the book depository museum.
God, don't get me started.
I know.
Oh boy, Anthony, here we go.
I know, and they even in the displays and the mock-ups and the models in that museum, they're still covering for the CIA.
Totally.
The cat's out of the bag.
And
dude.
The mainstream media continues to assert that Oswald acted alone, in spite of the fact that he had no paraffin on his body. He said, "I'm just a patsy," and there are no fingerprints in the sniper's nest of Lee Harvey Oswald, but there are of Mac Wallace, who was Kennedy's assassin. I'm sorry, not Kennedy's. Yeah, Kennedy's assassin, but he was Johnson's hitman.
Yeah, Johnson's hitman.
And so come on. And Allen Dulles was in the CIA bunker in Virginia while the operation was underway. I mean, I've read the books, I've read the materials. On that, we are 100% in agreement. And that's where I decide whether I'm willing to give the CIA a break or not, whether I'm willing to say, well, maybe this, that, or the other. But they were so morally wrong and reprehensible for taking our president. And I've just got this sense that I don't know who killed Charlie Kirk, but I don't think you could cover it up like it's been covered up without a role of our government in being involved at some level. And I'm not saying where, but it really seriously pains me when I think about Charlie being snatched from our grasp, because I knew Charlie. He was the smartest person I've ever met. He was a disciple of Christ. He could quote the Bible better than any preacher I've ever met. And he was a patriot in this country. And he was bringing young people back to religion and to patriotism and motivating them to become involved. Why would anybody be so evil as to take him from us? It wasn't
Because
Tyler
of the
Robbins.
Empire of Lies.
All right, Empire of Lies by Charles Goyette is available where?
It's Amazon. Get it at Amazon. I priced it low so everybody can read it. Not to me. I don't care if I make a dime on it.
Well, I swear, I think you told me you were going to send me an autographed copy.
I did. I didn't send you an autographed one, but I sent you one.
You did send me one?
Yeah.
All right,
I had a fulfillment service send it to you a couple of weeks back.
It's on my nightstand. I will go dig it out of the other 50 that are sitting there waiting for me to read that I don't ever get to. But you've motivated me. I'm going to go get it, because you have not come with theories. You've come with actual facts, and I am listening to you, and I'm sure our listeners are as well. So. I want to wrap up Iran real quick. Are you aware that the U.S. Air Force KC-135 declared an emergency over the Strait of Hormuz, flying in the direction of Doha, and it has disappeared from the landscape, and it is believed that it's just disappeared. But our own government says, oh, no, it's safe.
Yeah, I saw the headline, or a brief, like one-line headline, so I don't know any of the details about it. But I also saw the thing this morning when the United States government, I don't know if it was the Navy or the Defense Department, told shippers when we had Operation Freedom or whatever it was that lasted 24 hours, it told shippers, well, you can try to get your oil out of the strait now by hugging the Omani coastline and see how it works out for you. See how it works out for you. These guys are carrying millions of, if you're Lloyd's of London and they say, okay, we're going to hug the Omani coastline now so we can get out of here. The United States government told us we should try to do that and see if it works. They drop your coverage so fast it'd make your head spin. So, the whole thing, it's impossible to keep up with the thing now.
Yeah.
It's got your head spinning.
Well, they declare an emergency and then it disappears, and then we're told that no, nothing happened. Nothing to see here. Don't even bother to look.
You people keep moving.
My theory is that President Trump is trying to wind this down, and he's finding that it is extremely difficult, because I think they underestimated the will and the resolve of the Iranian, I say demonic leadership. You give them a break for being the beat dog, but how do we wind it down?
I don't say they're not demonic. Yeah, he wants to wind it down because it hurts him politically.
Well,
and he says things that are ridiculous. He says, well, I don't care if gas went to $200 or oil went to $200 a barrel, that it would be worth it. Well, it'd be worth it to him. It wouldn't be worth it to me. But
well, I think
I know he wants out of it.
I differ with you on that. I think it's time to hold them accountable for the things that they've done. Can it lead to a more peaceful world? Can the Iranian people actually have a democratically led country that will put a responsible leader in place? I think that's the goal. It should be, if it's not.
Well, if you end the sanctions, that'll happen.
There you go. Well,
they are the kicked dog.
So don't you think, don't you think, let me see if I can find a less biased way to ask the question. Are we repeating the same behavior in Cuba right now?
Of course.
Isn't Cuba next?
And, we had sanctions on Cuba because they were aligned with the Soviets, and it was a revolutionary regime 90 miles off the coast, and that's why we had sanctions. That was in 1959. There is no more Soviet Union. The missiles have all been taken back home. The Soviet Union doesn't exist, and yet the sanctions persist because what? They're a bad government. The Saudis are a bad government, and we subsidize them. You know, we support them. We support bad governments all over the world. If you want the people to be free and prosperous, stop the damn sanctions on them. It's just unbelievable.
Well, what we are doing to the Cuban people right now is really bad. We have choked their oil. Did you see the video that Nick Shirley posted? He went to Cuba for 24 hours.
No, I did not see
Well,
it, yeah.
he was afraid he wasn't going to be able to get out because after having been there for an hour, he realized that he was being followed by 3 people that were Cuban intelligence. And they followed him everywhere he went. And he toured Havana and was showing how there are lines outside the hospitals, that they don't have power to operate the hospitals, and they don't have food to eat and cars to drive, that a liter of gasoline is $10, and that the Cuban people are really, really hurting. Then we're going to swoop in as being the saviors, and we're going to kick the leadership out and say how bad they were. But the fact of the matter is they're in that condition right now, largely because we have erected a blockade and we're not allowing oil to reach Cuba, so they can't operate anything, including their power plants.
Squeeze them and squeeze them, John. And it's the same thing. I used to get these neocon, these famous neocons like Michael Ledeen on my show 25, 26, 27 years ago, and they'd say, well, if we just squeeze the Iranian regime badly enough, tightly enough, hard enough, if we squeeze them hard enough, then the people will rise as one and overthrow the regime. Well, we've been doing it for 66 years in Cuba. Hasn't happened. We've been doing it for 46 years and 47 years in Iran. It hasn't happened. But they keep telling us, oh, this is the strategy. We squeeze the people bad enough, they'll overthrow their regime.
There is a moral issue at stake. I am very troubled by it, even though, if it were 1960, I'd feel much differently about it. If there were nuclear weapons that the Soviets were trying to put in. I don't know who is active in Cuba today. I think that the Chinese are. I don't know what the relationship is with Russia. I think President Trump may have, and this is just my guess, said, well, if we're ever going to take Cuba, now's the time, because Russia is stretched so thin with their war in the Ukraine and all that they've got going on in their country, that they're in a weak position right now, and so now is the time to do it. I think in part that Trump is a victim of his own success. In Venezuela, it was so easy to remove Maduro, and it was without any loss of U.S. life. I think there was loss of Venezuela, and were they Chinese soldiers or Russian soldiers that were helping to defend Maduro in his palace? I don't remember.
I don't know.
But I think he thought, well, we'll just go into Iran, we'll kill all the leaders, and then we'll go to Cuba. We'll strangle the economy, and the people will be so desperate they'll welcome us in. But the beneficiary of that really is the future security of America, because it looks to me like Trump is trying to protect the flanks of our country. Venezuela, which is proximate to our southern border, Cuba, which is most proximate to our southern border, and then he proposed this outlandish idea of buying Greenland. I didn't know that countries were for sale, but it would create geographically a perimeter around the U.S., which I do think would be in our best interest, in the name of America first.
Well, I don't think you want to live in a Mad Max world in which the most powerful country can go in and abduct people and leaders of country without international justification or shoot people in boats on the high seas. That's the Mad Max world. And I remember
I did not like that. I did not like that.
When Thomas Jefferson was drafting the Declaration of Independence in July of 1776, he wrote a line in there that was really kind of important for people to remember. Nobody was going to tell the colonists who to obey and what to do. But he said, I'm not just presenting our list of grievances against the king. I'm doing it for a reason. I'm doing it because of a decent respect for the opinions of mankind, that they deserve to see why we're doing this. But we don't have a decent respect for the opinions of mankind. Not that we would bow or defer to what, some poll taken overseas says that we should do, but we have lost a sense of a decent respect for the opinions of mankind, and we think that might makes right. And that's wonderful when you're on top, but it's not going to be that way. It may be that way the rest of my life or your life, but our own prosperity is waning fast and others are growing fast. It's changing very, very quickly. We're on the cusp of a major economic calamity in this country. Major. If you look at private credit firms, if you look at the banks they're choking, you look at the AI bubble that looks like it could pop any minute. If you look at all this stuff, we got really, really serious problem. They say, we'll grow our way out of it. They've been telling us we'd grow our way out of our economic debt for, I guess I would say 50 years. We never grow our way out. They only print their way out of it. That's how you destroy a currency once and for all. So,
all right.
we're not always going to be the top dog. You know dogs well. It's nice to be a top dog, but the top dog isn't the top
let's
dog
spend a
forever.
few minutes talking about that, because I do have a very different perspective on it. There's no argument about the debt. Let's be very clear that I think the debt is the greatest threat that this country is facing today, and somebody is going to have to deal with it. But I do believe that President Trump is smart, and I do believe that he realizes how perilous that debt is. And I listened to him very intently, and I think that he has a plan to deal with the debt. I do believe that part of his formula is to outgrow it. And make no mistake, we are outgrowing it right now. Now, I'm not saying that that's the solution, the solution, but I don't think there is the solution, because politically, you just can't stop the Democrats from spending. And they are demonstrating that as bad as they are, and as much as we dislike them, and as much as we feel that their whole foundation is based on lies after lies after lies and false narratives and really bad stuff. But so I think we have to be smart in the way that we do it. If I'm told that if we curtail fraud in this country, that in itself will stop the growth of the deficit and will actually reduce it.
Yeah, waste, fraud, and abuse. This
is what I think. I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but I'm just putting it out there, and then I'll let you respond to it.
Okay.
I think it's a multi-pronged approach. First was the big, beautiful bill, and I don't know that it really accomplished a whole lot in the terms of the tax relief that it's offered to, because, first of all, no tax on tips. Don't kid yourself. Those people aren't paying tax on tips anyway. That money's going in their pockets. Do you think that a waitress in Peoria is actually counting the tips that she gets and reporting on her taxes? I don't believe so. No tax on Social Security, but if you earn over $75,000 a year, you still have to pay tax on it. So that doesn't really accomplish as much as we're led to believe that it does. But still, consumer confidence and belief in our economy is what drives our economy, and it has boosted the spirits of the American people. That combined with the tariffs, a lot of the tariffs have been eliminated for the time being, but they're working on restoring the tariffs. The tariffs had a potential of $600 to $800 billion of newfound money for the United States. If that would be devoted to reducing the deficit, and we're told that it would, that will go a long ways. And then you combine that with the $19 trillion of capital that companies have pledged to deploy in America over the next now 3 years that are remaining. That is significant. So those things will rise the tide. Now, if you couple that with eliminating the fraud, then I think we can get meaningful budget relief, and we can get this national debt under control. Now, you tell me why that doesn't work.
Well, if you'd like to have a legislature made up of honest elected officials, vote for all of them that come out and say to you, look you in the eye and say, I'm in favor of waste, fraud, and abuse. because they all say that they're against waste, fraud, and abuse. I chided Vivek Ramaswamy the other day. He came with something on X about, well, if we just cut the waste, fraud, and abuse. Oh my God! Do you know how old I am? Do you know how long I've been hearing this? So,
well, since the $80 hammer at the Pentagon when we were children.
Well, what did the Republicans do with Doge? Nada.
They absolutely killed it. But now they put J.D. Vance in as the fraud czar, and I do have a pretty high level of trust with J.D. I think he wants to be president, and he does not want to be the border czar that Kamala was, where she did nothing and she got nothing and lost the trust of independents and people that were voted independent. They turned against her because she delivered nothing. I think JD looks at this as an opportunity that he really can bring meaningful reform. And I think Marco Rubio has signed up because he too wants to be president.
Well, the level of taxation, this is Milton Friedman line, the level of taxation in an economy, that's like a weight on the people, just like, $110 Brent crude is a weight on the people. It's like a new tax. It's like 50% increase in the price of gas is like a tax. It's a repressant on the economy. But Milton Friedman said, the level of taxation in a country is equal to the level of government spending. So if you don't see government spending leveling off, then taxation, the plundering of the people, is increasing at the same time. I don't have any faith based on evidence, based on the historical precedents, that anything will be done except to expand the budget until it's critical now. I don't think there's any way out.
We are approaching a tipping point, I do believe.
Yeah.
But Trump is not an idiot. And, I had dinner with Steve Moore and Art Laffer 6 weeks ago. They're chattering in the president's ear. They get it. And I don't know about Scott Bessent. I want to believe in him. And I would believe in him almost unqualifiedly were it not for the fact that he worked for George Soros twice. That's a pretty significant asterisk on his CV for me.
Well, I will tell you something in terms of, the conservative movement and stuff, you're in the majority and I'm very clearly in the minority. And my view is what divides us is the majority of people in the conservative movement rely on, trust, and have faith in Donald Trump. I do not. That's the dividing line.
You're not alone, but I don't know what the alternative is.
Well,
I really
an
don't.
alternative.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a national government that we depend on for virtually everything that we do on a daily basis. They are controlling the food that we eat, the gas that we use to power our cars, the safety of our borders, and the stability of world peace. And I mean, I think you got to give Trump credit that he has ended 8 wars or skirmishes. Classify them.
I don't even know. I don't know about that. I don't know that that's true. I don't know. I've heard him say that repeatedly. I give him credit for the border. The border's more or less under control now.
Not more or less, Charles. Now, come on. The border is shut. Come on.
Well, maybe it is. And I'd say I give him credit for what he's done with the border.
Yeah.
In the story, I can't quantify it, but I give him credit. I'm from Arizona. I know something about the flood that we've had there for 25 years, 30 years
for sure.
Over that border. So I give him credit for that. I'd like to think that, our tax dollars aren't still going to third world countries and to illegals in here to pay for their sex change operations. I'd like to think that is over with and we're not mutilating, prepubescent kids any longer. I want to give him credit for the things that have happened in our country.
And not allowing men to play in women's sports.
That's fine. I'm just glad of that. I'm very happy about that. But the big issues that determine the freedom and prosperity of the American people are always war and money. When the money system goes, everything goes. Wars are paid for in America and have been paid for in America for over 100 years by inflation. That's what pays for it's not a coincidence that after the Iraq war, we had the 2008 meltdown. It's not a coincidence we had the stagflation decade after the Vietnam War deficit spending, the guns and butter spending. All of our wars for over 100 years have been paid for by inflation. When the money goes, everything goes.
That is indisputable. You are 100% right. That's how we paid our World War II debt. We had the greatest inflation up until that point.
Well, John,
in our
let me
entire
ask you
history.
let me ask you a really important question. What would shatter your implicit trust in Trump's judgment or what he does? What would happen that would shatter that?
I don't know. I haven't contemplated that question. I guess I would say that I'll be like Ted Kennedy and drive off that bridge when we get to it.
Well, don't stay in any late night Chappaquiddick parties, I'll tell you that.
Well, it's a fair question, and the thought has crossed my mind. I just feel that my sense is, having been a student of politics and government for my entire, not my adult life, my entire life, when I put on my first bumper sticker for Richard Nixon in 1959, I've watched Trump. I've studied him. He is the hardest working person I know, second only to Elon Musk. And if you put it in the context of a 79-year-old, he is the hardest working person maybe in the world. And I think he's doing it for our country, and I think he is doing it selflessly. That doesn't mean that he and his kids aren't profiting along the way. Every world leader in the world profits. There's a reason that that Putin is the richest man on earth. I think that's just sort of part of the game, and I think that's why we focus on Biden's dementia rather than his corruption. Did you notice how fast that whole investigation from Jim Comer just went away? Yeah. I mean, $60 million, we've got him dead to rights, and then. Yeah.
It was an indictment of the intelligence community too. You know, here's the opinion of the retired intelligence professionals. You know that the Hunter Biden laptop has all the signs of a Russian disinformation program.
Yeah,
I mean, these people are so corrupt from top to bottom.
So they're so corrupt, and I don't know how you fix it. I really don't.
Well, you end the empire. It's the empire of lies. You cannot have, this is Mark Twain, you cannot have a republic of free people and an empire at the same time. The two are not compatible.
Mark Twain was a very knowledgeable person with a lot of wisdom. Who can argue with that? But who are you going to select? What leader can we select and put them in power that will be moral and ethical and not succumb to be a puppet of the deep state? And I unfortunately, I got to wrap this up because we've solved America's problems. Now I got to go on to solving Nigeria's problems.
Okay, let me say
I've got
one
a
thing.
prince waiting on us.
Let me say one quick thing to discredit myself before we go.
No, go right ahead.
You know who I sent money to the other day? I haven't sent money to a politician since Ron Paul. You know who I sent money to?
We hadn't sent any money to the Truth with John Gordon, I can tell you that. We need it.
You know what politician that I sent money to? And this drives the MAGA people. Actually, the MAGA thing, in my view, is so totally split. Half the MAGA people get it. Half the MAGA people are angry at me for it. But I told them the other day on a show, I said, I just sent a big contribution. I don't think it was that big, but I sent a contribution to Tom Massey. Why? I want the budget under control. I want the wars to end. I want, I would like to get to the bottom of the Jeffrey Epstein thing.
I'd like to get to the bottom of all that stuff.
I would too.
I think we deserve it. We need a cleansing in America if we're ever going to reclaim the moral authority to lead the world. That's my issue, frankly. And on that, you and I are in rabid agreement.
What we want, we're all in agreement. We're both in agreement. What we desire. We're both in agreement. We want a free people, honest government, healthy American culture. Those are all things that we want. Prosperous people.
Well, why don't you and I, and we'll get Tucker and Megan, and we'll even invite Dan Bongino to the party, and we'll organize a 1 million man march on Washington, and we'll assemble in front of the CIA and the NSA and demand transparency, accountability, and a stopping of the madness. I just want them to behave according to our Constitution and the laws of this country. I don't think that's too much to ask, and I think it's damn well time that the American people stand up, join hands, and insist on it.
Well, I think that's a great note to end it on then, as you say, because these are the things that we so agree on. They're so important to, my kids, my grandkids. They're so important.
Charles Goyette, an author, a scholar, a patriot, my friend. thank you for coming on. We were only supposed to talk for 30 minutes, and damned if we haven't spent almost a whole hour. But let's get together again anytime and continue to analyze these problems, because, you know, we can sit here and agree with each other all day long. I don't know that we accomplish anything. Right. But when we can have a healthy intellectual discussion about things, I think it really does help us get to this sign that's right over here in our studio, and it's labeled The Truth. Yeah. Charles Goyette, thanks for joining us once again on The Truth. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Anytime, John. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, today's studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. If you're grinding through the day like I do and need a perfect kick without the jitters, grab some Bone Frog Coffee. Best part, it's veteran owned, founded by retired Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special operations. If you don't already know, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol of the SEAL teams, and that represents those that gave their lives in combat and in a reminder of the ultimate sacrifices for our freedom and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. I start every day with a cup of Bone Frog coffee. I recommend that you do too. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. Aiming for over 500,000 donated. Coffee with a cause, you bet. That's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head over to bonefrogcoffee.com, snag some K-Cups, whole beans, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day just like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our vets and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. Check them out once again at www.bonefrogcoffee.com and use the promo code TRUTH. Stu Leonard is a relatively famous American entrepreneur and marketer. He said, if you press a button and a light comes on, keep pressing the button. Well, we did a show a couple of weeks ago with Mike Arnold, who is an author, and he's written a book called The Epicenter Nigeria. And he really opened our eyes to this country that I'll say it in the first person, I knew so little about. I mean, I knew it was an African nation, and that's about it. I didn't know whether it was in the north, south, east, west of Africa. And especially, I did not realize the amount of wealth that is in Nigeria, nor did I realize the amount of poverty, nor did I realize the amount of corruption. And so all of that wrapped into one. So I started trying to educate myself a little more on Nigeria. I guess the point I was about to make is on that one episode, we got 1.3 million views, eclipsed any episode that we've done in our 4 years on this program. So we're going to keep pressing the light, not because we're just opportunistic capitalists, which we are, but more importantly, we want to learn about the world stage and other countries besides just our own. So I have tracked down Philippe Jacqueport, and he is the executive director of the Refueling Development Initiative. Philippe, welcome to The Truth. By the end of the show, I'll be sure to get the pronunciation of your first name. Yeah, I'm just going to call you Philip in the meantime. Yeah. Tell us about the Refueling Development Initiative, and that'll get us started.
Well, my background is journalism. When I was on the field, and that was between 2002 and 2007, I covered a lot that had to do with the environment and agriculture. So I moved away from journalism, that mainstream journalism, in 2007, and I decided to do a lot more in the environment space. But Refueling Development Initiative is a Nigerian non-governmental organization. It was founded in 2023. Myself and some journalists, set up this organization. And essentially, what do we do? We work with indigenous communities, grassroots groups, and civil society to expose and challenge corporate impunity on sound environmental practices and human rights abuse that you find in most of Nigeria's oil-rich communities. But we don't work only on oil and gas. There are also other um, natural resources in Nigeria. It's like Nigeria is just that country which has natural resources everywhere, solid minerals. So essentially what we do is to work with those communities to see what's happening and expose what does not seem right.
So is it an economic development organization, would you say?
It's just a civil society organization. So we are more into advocacy.
An advocacy group.
Yeah, an advocacy group. And of course, we poke our eyes into economic issues. So oil wealth, solid mineral extraction, ultimately, if it's well managed, it translates into economic gains for the country and for the people. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening. There's huge wealth in Nigeria, just like you mentioned in your intro, beyond oil and gas, which Nigeria has in abundance, which is our mainstay, which is where about 85 to 90% of our revenue comes from. There's also other solid minerals.
You said
largely untapped.
85 or 90% of your income comes from where?
Yeah, it comes from oil and gas.
Oil and gas, yes.
Yes.
In fact, is Nigeria the sixth largest producer of petroleum?
It's within that range, 6, 7. It continues to fluctuate.
And a member of OPEC.
Yeah, Nigeria is a member of OPEC.
So give us a little 30,000-foot view of Nigeria. You're on the northwest coast of Africa, is that correct?
Nigeria is in the western part of Africa, and Nigeria is actually the most populous black nation on earth. We have a population of about 240 million people, and that is about half of the population in Africa alone. But beyond that, Nigeria is rich, like I said, in a lot of natural resources, but unfortunately, it has not translated into it has not translated into real benefits for the local people, especially where you have these natural resources coming from. Unfortunately, that is the situation.
240 million people, that is extraordinary. And what is the standard of living in Nigeria? What is the average income of the Nigerian people?
Well, most of the Nigerian people live below $2 a day. It's as bad as that. It's a nation, like I mentioned, that has a lot in terms of natural resources, oil and gas, and every other thing. But then it has been largely mismanaged. Successive administrations have continued to plunder the resources of the country. What is supposed to be gains, which will trickle down into meaningful life for the people, development, good healthcare, good infrastructure, does not exist. We've been blessed with natural resources, but we've not been blessed with very, very good leaders. So that's the major problem. Most Nigerians live on about $2 a day, and of course, you and I know that is totally abysmal.
So what is the name of your leader?
The leader of Nigeria today is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Now,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
read just recently that he graduated from a school in Nigeria. The only problem with that was that he graduated in a year that allegedly was before the school even opened its doors. Does that give us a glimpse into who we're dealing with here?
Well, that is a subject most Nigerians don't want to delve into, and I certainly don't want to delve into that issue. But there's a lot of controversy surrounding, you know, where the president schooled in Nigeria. Of course, he lived in the United States for quite a long time.
Where did he
But then,
live?
yeah, I think Chicago or so. But then there's this controversy about, where he schooled in Nigeria and things like that. But
So do you think he knew
that is
Barack
politics.
Obama when he was here?
There's a possibility because I think they grew around the same period. I think he was in the United States in the 70s and late 70s and sometime in the 80s, maybe early 90s.
Well,
So definitely.
wasn't David Axelrod involved in his election as president of Nigeria, or did I imagine that?
Well, I don't know that. I don't know that.
So tell us about President Tinubu. Tinubu.
Well, Tinubu is the president of Nigeria at the moment. He was one of the leaders of the pro-democracy movements when Nigeria was under military rule, under the dictatorship of a general called Abacha, now late. Tinubu was one of those who spearheaded campaigns for the military to quit, and that advocacy was a fallout from what Nigerians are judged as the freest and fairest elections, which happened in 1993. We had Abiola, who was Chief MK Abiola, who was from the southern part of the country, and he won, like I said, what is adjudged to be the freest and fairest elections. But unfortunately, the military government at the time annulled it. Abiola resisted, and then he had a lot of supporters, a lot of young activists at the time who supported the advocacy for him to be installed and for the military to leave. And now President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was one of those who was part of that, the arrowhead of that campaign, traveled around the world, went to so many places, including the United States, to seek the intervention of the US in ensuring that Abiola got his mandate. Well, that advocacy, Abacha died at a point, Abiola himself died at a point, and the military had no option. The pressure was so much. They had to quit government and hand over to a civilian administration in 1999. So President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was one of those who spearheaded that effort. And immediately after that effort, he also contested for governorship elections. He won in Lagos, did 2 terms, and subsequently he became like a political godfather, one of those who ensured that the roadmap he created for Lagos was sustained by subsequent administrations. The 2023 elections that brought him in is one of the most controversial elections in Nigeria's history. But then he was declared the president. He's been the president for about 3 years now. He's seeking a second term re-election. Well, I think that's his story. But then there are also other issues surrounding what has happened in the last 3 years, the promises Nigerians what Nigerians were promised and what the situation is today. I don't think many Nigerians are happy. Many Nigerians feel we could get a better deal than what we are getting today. So it's and it was expected that someone of his own nature who led the campaigns against the military would do better. But like I said, Nigerians are not too happy. We expect more than what we are getting today. The 2027 elections, which he is also contesting for, has begun. and we also have other people contesting for elective offices. Nigerians are gearing up to exercise their franchise. So that is where we are today. That's the much I can say about him.
So we just fact checked it. Tinubu, Obama, and Axelrod did all live in Chicago at the same time, and Axelrod has served as a consultant to Tinubu in his campaign. Do you think that Nigeria is a safe place today? I mean, could I come and visit Nigeria? Or I guess I should have asked, could I have come to Nigeria 3 weeks ago before I've started this commentary on Nigeria and started looking behind the curtain? But could an ordinary U.S. citizen visit Nigeria today and have a expectation of safety?
Nigeria is a big country. You have 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. I speak as a Nigerian. Of course, there are places you can visit that are safe, but then there are also a lot of places you will need a lot of security to visit now because of the Boko Haram insurgency, banditry, which has created a lot of insecurity in the, especially the northern part of Nigeria, especially the northeastern part of Nigeria. But then there are places you can visit. I'm in Nigeria. There are places you can visit. To a large extent, the southwest is still relatively safe. The south is safe. The southeast is relatively safe. But then there's a lot of crisis in the northern part of the country, which is fueled by landowners, herders crisis, and then of course the Boko Haram crisis, which predates this administration, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. But we had felt with the criticism that previous administrations got for the way they handled insecurity, this government will have done better. We are not quite satisfied. We've heard promises. We continue to hope that those promises will materialize. But then, back to the question: is Nigeria a safe place to visit? Yeah, you can visit on places in Nigeria, but there are some places you will need a lot of security to visit. So that's the much I can say about that.
So we're talking to Philip Jakpour, who is the executive director of the Nigerian Refueling Development Initiative. One of your interests, as I understand it, is mining that is taking place in Nigeria as we speak. As you know, batteries have become and have a high demand all worldwide, really. Apple relies on batteries, Microsoft, Tesla. They all depend on power and battery power in particular. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Nigeria has tremendous deposits of lithium, which is the primary natural resource that goes into the production of these batteries. Tell us about the mining of lithium in Nigeria, if you could.
Yes, you are right. Nigeria has, I think experts have said Nigeria has about $34 billion worth of untapped lithium deposits, which again is largely in the part of Nigeria that is not too safe, that you need a lot of security to visit. So lithium in commercial quantity was discovered in Nigeria in, I think, around 2021-22. And a little bit about the mining sector in Nigeria. The mining sector in Nigeria is very, very opaque. Nigeria has relied on oil and gas for decades, about nearly six decades. And when commercial extraction of oil started, every other sector took the backstage. Agriculture took the backstage. Even solid minerals that were there before, tin, coal, they were all neglected in favor of oil. I think the dip in oil prices that followed COVID-19 pandemic was what forced the Nigerian government to start looking at, other sources of income beyond oil and gas. And fortunately, lithium, which is a transition mineral, is one of the resources that was discovered in commercial quantity again in different parts of Nigeria, including a place called Nasarawa State, which is in central Nigeria. To answer you, yes, Nigeria has, very, very commercial quantity of lithium scattered in different parts of the country. I think about 10 or so states has huge lithium deposits.
Okay, so who buys Nigerian oil? Who do you sell to?
Well, Nigeria sells to a variety of countries across the globe. I think at a point, even the United States, buys bought Nigerian oil. But then there are still other states. I think as at 2004, the United States was still the largest buyer of oil in Nigeria. But then there are still, like I said, other countries. I think France still buys Nigerian oil, Spain, the Netherlands, Italy, these countries buy Nigerian oil.
So basically, the European community.
Mostly the European community, yeah.
Okay, so you have land ownership in Nigeria, and I guess most of the land is owned by people who have inherited it from generations before. Is that accurate?
Yes, you're right.
So are they not getting rich?
Well, ideally they should be rich, but unfortunately they are not rich. No thanks
How can they not be rich when the oil is underneath their property?
So there's this law called the Land Use Act of 1979. I think it has been it's been reviewed now, which vests all lands. Yes, ancestrally people belong to different places, including those places where you have those oil resources. But at the law, the language of the law does not give that much power to people in those communities to control what is theirs. So the Land Use Act vests all lands in any part of Nigeria, in the hands of the government. The where I come from, if for instance oil is discovered, the government can choose to evict us and then take over that land. And of course, the language of the government is that it's for economic development, which is for all of us. So that law is one law that Nigerians have been demanding that the government reviews, so that people who are indigenous to a community, whose ancestral patrimony is a particular community, should be able to determine what their lands are used for and the benefits they derive. So I come from the Niger Delta, where most of the oil and gas come from. So it has taken us about 30 or so years of advocacy, for instance, for the government to agree to give us 30% of the revenue that comes from oil and gas where I come from. So we only get about 13% of royalties, from whatever is extracted from our lands, and the rest goes into the national purse. Unfortunately, that's how the law is skewed in Nigeria. The government owns every land.
So it's property ownership without the benefits. Where does the money go then if the government claims ownership? Are they taking the money from the sale of the oil?
Well, of course, that's what happens. But then the language of the law is what activists like us have been challenging. And our position is that the government is holding the land in trust for the people. The government says the same thing. So if it's holding the land in trust, it's actually that of the people. So the framing in the law is where the problem is. and successive administrations have done everything to maintain status quo. So that's why local people get evicted from their ancestral lands. That's why government and people who don't belong to those ancestral lands determine what goes to those local people in terms of royalties. And it's unfortunate, but that's the situation we found ourselves.
As an outsider, it sounds to me, based on what I'm hearing from you, and you're not the first person I've heard it from, is that the Land Use Act of 1979 was really just a taking. It was a money grab from the people who own the land and should be the rightful beneficiaries of the natural resources buried below it.
It's not just a money, it's both money and land grab, because the government can also choose to evict any citizen from what is supposed to be an ancestral land for any reason that the government deems fit. And we've had people challenge government, but it never, achieves anything meaningful. It all revolves around the language of the Land Use Act, until we frame that language as Nigerians want it to be framed, not those in power. We'll continue to, go around in circles in terms of, benefits that ancestral communities are supposed to get from the natural resources, that's their own.
Tell us, by extension, then, how does that impact the mining of lithium, which you say occurs mostly in the central part of the country?
I think that's a very good connection. So lithium is found in largely in the central part of Nigeria, but you can also find it in other parts of the country. But the largest deposits are in the central part of Nigeria. So the same challenge you have with oil and gas, we also have with lithium extraction. Ideally, so-called investors, companies that extract, are supposed to engage local communities. That's what the law says, of course. Engage local communities, conduct what they call environmental and social impact assessment, which the local people are supposed to be part and parcel of, before extraction starts happening. But unfortunately, because of that same Land Use Act, which gives the state the power, you have a lot of so-called investors only talk to the governor of a state, and then a community is mapped out, shared out, and people who have farmlands suddenly wake up and they discover that their farmlands are being partitioned or being excavated, or you have other forms of activities that they don't sanction happening, and they find it hard to resist it because those companies will readily tell you that, look, don't talk to us, go and talk to your government. We've had a lot of cases like that with lithium in a place called Nasarawa State, where we observed that a lot of environmentally unsound practices have happened and continue to happen. And the problem is that the local people do not have a say.
This is what I have read and I have understood, that rogue elements come into a village, they terrorize and frighten the people that live in that village to the point that they leave. And if they don't leave, they then burn down the village. So anybody that remained flees for their own safety. That they then bring in mining companies that will extract the lithium from the ground, usually using child labor, and they do it with picks, axes, and shovels. They load it into trucks that then are sent to the nearest port. Where would that be? What would the port city be?
The port city is actually Lagos, where I am.
In Lagos, where you are.
Yes.
They pass multiple police checkpoints along the highway to get to Lagos, where they are summarily waved through. I don't know if they pay a tax or a passage fee, but they're not intercepted or deterred from proceeding to Lagos, where they are loaded on ships where the paperwork is falsified, often calling it just bare earth, soil, when actually it's lithium, which avoids having to pay an export duty, and that it is then loaded onto freighters which leave and sail to China, where it is offloaded and turned into lithium batteries, which are then sold to the consumers. Do I got that right? Oh, one last, and as you alluded to, they leave the village decimated. They don't reclaim the soil. They don't put it back nice and neat. That is just a vast wasteland when they're done. Have we got that right?
So let me put it this way.
Tell me what I said that's wrong.
You know, some elements are right. Some elements are right. But the question, which then helps to tilt the way I frame it, is this. Can elements that don't know the community, that don't have anything to do with the community, just come into a community and do those things and get out? We've seen in the course of my own work some elements of complicity. I will always say this, that no mining company comes into a community without some form of permits from government. So everything you've described would only happen because you have some unscrupulous government officials. Not everybody, whose responsibility is to ensure that the right thing is done, and they look the other way because they get some form of benefits, and then they allow these illegal miners to go into these communities, recruit child labor. Now, sometimes you also have willing participants. Now, why I say willing participants, you have those local communities who know they have the resources and there's no single benefit to them. And they feel, rather than stay back and watch these resources carted away, why not try to hack a living, you know? So they are victims of the system. Now, the rare earths we are talking about don't live through Lagos alone. They also live through the borders in the northern part of the country. So it's not, they don't all come to Lagos and go to China. Some come to Lagos and go to China. Some through the borders in the northern part of the country and go to the Middle East. So it's a combination of some of the things you have mentioned and what I've added. We found out over time that there's some level of complicity. I've done a lot of work beyond lithium. I've done a lot of work with tin mining and from my own observation in some of the communities I've visited, these miners, the illegal ones, have some connection with people in government who give them the permits to do these things. And so that's why they are brazen. That's why they're able to go to a community and do these things and, you know, go unchallenged. So to a large extent, some of the things you've mentioned are right, but I decided to complement it by making you understand that it even goes beyond just coming to Lagos and China, but also going to the Middle East, and then some level of complicity by people in government.
So the demand for lithium is at a global historical high. Are the people in Nigeria getting rich who own the land where the lithium is being mined?
No. People in those local communities are not getting rich. The people who get rich are just a cabal who exploit, you know, the ignorance in some cases, illiteracy in these communities, and then, you know, go into those communities and start doing these things. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of Chinese. In fact, you have a lot of Chinese in virtually all communities where you have lithium. My organization did a report which we released in December.
Why
titled,
does that not surprise me?
The title of the report is Silent Conquest, the Chinese infiltration of Nigeria's solid mineral sector.
So it's basically basically just thievery.
It's thievery. And virtually all the arrests that a government agency, the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, has done in the lithium sector always involved a Chinese
I hope
national.
that horn that we just heard isn't the state police announcing their arrival outside your house, or your office. Jiminy Christmas. Well, is it safe in central Nigeria? Are there reports of people being murdered or their lives being taken?
Things like that happen in some parts of central Nigeria. That is the reality. Anybody denying that will just be trying to deceive the world. The central part of Nigeria is also rich in beyond solid minerals. Is the green belt. That's where most of the food comes from. So we have a lot of competition for land in that area. And we have groups that want to uproot local people who are ancestral to some of those places so that they can take over those places and then, dominate that region. That is happening. It is reality. And it's happening a lot in central Nigeria.
And where in Nigeria is agriculture being done?
Most of the agricultural lands are also in the central part of Nigeria. That's where you have
the central part of Nigeria.
Yes, that's where you have vast land for rice cultivation, tubers, and a lot of food crops come from that part of the country.
And
that
where are those products? And where are those products going? Do they stay in Nigeria, or are they also being exported? And if so, where?
Most of those foods are consumed in Nigeria and in some surrounding African nations.
Well, at least it's staying
Niger, Mali, it goes as far as Niger, Chad, in the northern flank. And then, of course, countries like Republic of Benin, Togo, in the southwestern part of Nigeria, and then Cameroon also in the part of that part of Nigeria.
Well, I got to say, Philip, you're really kind of bumming me out here, and I'm sure the rest of our audience. What I'm hearing is you have a population that's 2/3 as large as the United States. You're a rich country in terms of oil and gas,
very rich,
and lithium, and you're also a large producer of agriculture. It sounds like a very rich country, yet your people are making $2 a day. Have we heard you right?
Less than $2 a day.
What a travesty. This is a story we're going to stay with and we're going to stay on. I would love to come to Nigeria, but I'm frankly a little afraid to do it. But we're going to continue to push the truth. And I appreciate your coming on our show today to talk about it. Is there anything else you wanted to say or explain before we wrap it up here?
It's a pleasure being on your show. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Philip. And I appreciate what you're doing. Philip Jakpoor, he is in Lagos, Nigeria, and he is the executive director of the Refueling Development Initiative. And we really appreciate your sharing the information with us. And we hope to have you back on. This is a story we're going to continue to follow. And, I just hate injustice. And it sounds like you've got a hefty quotient of it. Is there any light at the end of this dark tunnel? Do you see any hope that you can get a honest government for the people?
Well, I believe the people have to work for it. It is our fight. We can't run away. This is the only country we have. Nobody can do it for us. We'll just have to keep chipping away. I believe that one day, someday, we'll get it right.
Well, we have a lot in common. And Ronald Reagan said, freedom is not free. You have to work for it. And exactly. I think that you have echoed those very good words here today. So I wish you well. I wish the people of Nigeria well. And I hope that your citizenry truly get the payday that they are deserving of. Because at the end of the day, that oil and gas, that lithium, those natural resources are yours, not for the Chinese or other people that are putting their hand in the pie. So I hope that you do get brighter days ahead. Again, thank you, Philip Jetpour, for coming on The Truth today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.